My name is Rebecca Nolan. I'm 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my life quietly split into a before and an after. That night was supposed to be joyful, a lavish dinner celebrating my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. Their suburban Philadelphia home overflowed with nearly 300 guests. Crystal glasses chimed laughter, bounced off the walls, and everyone looked perfect in tailored suits and elegant dresses. I moved through the crowd in my simple black dress, balancing a tray of appetizers, smiling when I was supposed to, invisible in the way I had learned to be. Then my father stood up. He tapped his champagne flute, waited for silence, and announced with a confident, rehearsed smile that next week the entire family would be flying to the Bahamas for another celebration at the Four Seasons. The room exploded with excitement. People clapped, hugged, cheered. My brother actually squealed. I smiled too, letting myself imagine warm, sun-blue water and a rare moment where I might finally belong. All I did was ask a simple, reasonable question. What time is our flight? Instantly, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter drained away. My father stared at me as if I'd said something inappropriate. My mother's expression hardened, and without hesitation she said loudly enough for everyone to hear that I didn't need to know because I wasn't going. Someone had to stay behind and watch the children. In that second, 300 pairs of eyes landed on me. 300 silent confirmations that my place in this family was conditional. I stood frozen still holding the tray, while whispers spread and the applause faded into discomfort. Some guests avoided my gaze. Others pitied me openly. I heard someone murmur that I must be used to this by now. What none of them knew was that I wasn't powerless anymore. For 2 years I had been building something quietly, patiently in the background. And as the lights dimmed and the party ended, I made a decision that would change everything. If you've ever experienced a moment like this, stay with me, because what happened next was something no one saw coming. Before I tell you what happened next, if this kind of moment has ever hit you hard, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss how it all unfolded. 2 years earlier, the crack started in a different place. I had been with Anthony Clark for 4 years. We lived together in a small apartment in Philadelphia, shared routines, talked about marriage and kids, the way couples do when they think time is on their side. One Tuesday evening after dinner, he sat me down on the couch, looked me in the eye without blinking, and said, "I love you, Rebecca, but I'm not in love with you anymore. You're too reliable. There's no spark left. You're just there, like furniture, like wallpaper." The words landed flat and final. He packed a duffel bag that night, left the key on the counter, and walked out. The apartment suddenly felt too large, too silent. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there staring at the empty spot where his shoes used to be. The next afternoon, I wandered downtown without a plan and ended up in a dimly lit pawn shop on Market Street. Behind the glass case was a digital tablet, used but clean screen, bright, priced at $200. I paid cash from the emergency fund I kept for rent. I didn't tell a soul. That tablet became the one thing that was only mine. I started designing after work late into the night when the city quieted. At first they were simple digital portraits, a janitor mopping an empty office hallway at 3 in the morning, the weathered hands of a street vendor counting pennies in the cold, an elderly woman sitting alone on a bus bench with her shopping bags, face lined with the kind of patience that comes from being looked through every day. I called the series Overlooked Lives. No profile picture, no real name, just the images posted anonymously on Instagram. The first post got 12 likes, mostly friends who didn't know it was me. Then one image, a close-up of a night shift security guard's tired eyes, got shared by someone with a caption, "This is us. Invisible until someone bothers to look." It spread. Followers trickled in, then surged. 10,000 in 2 years. Comments started arriving from strangers. "I work the overnight shift, and no one ever sees me, thank you. This feels like my mom at the bus stop every morning." Finally, someone drew what we live. Each message chipped away at the hollow Anthony left. The work wasn't about revenge, It was about seeing what gets ignored, including me. I kept the tablet wrapped in an old scarf at the back of my closet. My mother visited once during those 2 years and noticed the laptop open on my table. She asked why I was wasting time on that screen instead of helping more around here. I closed the lid, mumbled something about client deadlines, and changed the subject. She didn't push, but the questions stayed with me. Good things don't happen to helpers like me, I thought. So I stayed quiet, kept designing in secret, kept posting. The series became the only space where I wasn't just reliable background. I was creating something that mattered. That pain fueled my designs. Back to the present as I prepared for the party. The house where I grew up sits in the suburbs of Philadelphia, a classic white colonial with 4 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, and a lawn, trimmed to HOA perfection, that always made it look like the family inside had everything under control. My father, George Nolan, retired 3 years ago from his engineering job at a regional firm and now spends most days in his armchair, reading the paper present in body, but rarely in conversation. My mother, Barbara Nolan, never worked a paid job, but runs the household with the efficiency of a CEO, chairing the church women's committee, organizing neighborhood fundraisers, and guarding our family's reputation like it's her full-time career. Then there's my brother Christopher Ward, 35. 3 years older than me, a corporate manager downtown at Elite Corp who drops the firm name into every conversation as if it's part of his identity. He married Stephanie Ward, a stay-at-home mom who drives a new BMW that always claims the prime driveway spot. My 10-year-old Toyota gets parked on the street. Whenever I pull up, my mother says the same thing. Rebecca, move your car, guests notice what's in the driveway first. I never push back. I just move it. Christopher and Stephanie have 2 kids, Jacob 6 and Mia 4, bright, loud, and loved in a way that always seemed effortless for them. But love came with expectations placed squarely on me. Every tax season I handled Christopher's returns for free because he was too swamped with work. I spent hours on spreadsheets while he golfed with clients. Thanksgiving mornings I arrived at 6 to roast the turkey, set the table with my mother's Wedgwood china, the set reserved for display, not use, arrange flowers, polish silver, and coordinate 7 side dishes so everything hit the table hot. Christopher and Stephanie rolled in around noon in cashmere sweaters, kissed cheeks, and sat down to plates already filled. Birthday parties followed the same pattern. For Jacob's 6th, I ran an 8-hour dinosaur-themed games cake cleanup while Stephanie got a manicure because she needed a break. Mia's 4th was princess-themed. I decorated, entertained, and scrubbed glitter off the floors while Stephanie scrolled her phone. The one time I asked to skip an event because of a client deadline, my mother's voice turned ice cold. Family comes first, Rebecca. We all make sacrifices. Except the sacrifices never seem to touch anyone else. Last Christmas, Stephanie handed me an apron, embroidered with "World's Best Aunt" in glittery letters. She beamed like she'd given me gold. I wore it every single time I came over to cook, clean, or watch the kids. My mother introduced Christopher to guests as my son, the manager at Elite Corp. We're so proud. While I was Rebecca, she helps out part-time as a remote marketer. No title, no pride, just utility. The resentment didn't explode. It accumulated quietly: every moved car, every free tax return, every early arrival and late departure, until being the reliable one felt like the only role I was allowed to play. 3 weeks before the anniversary, I got an offer that shifted everything. One person in my family actually saw me. My Aunt Diane Perry is my mother's younger sister, the one Barbara still calls the family disappointment, because she never married and chose ceramics over what my mother considered a real job. 20 years ago, Diane moved to Ojai and opened Clay Haven, a small cafe with a pottery studio in the back, blue shutters, lavender spilling from window boxes, tourists sipping coffee while she taught classes in the rear room. My mother never forgave her for throwing away potential to play with clay, but Diane built something solid on her own terms. I had been calling Aunt Diane every Sunday night for 7 years without my mother knowing. She was the only one I trusted enough to send a single design to test the water. Her reply arrived within minutes. Rebecca, this is extraordinary. You have a real gift. No one had ever said anything like that about my work. She encouraged every late-night session, every hesitant post. She was the one who turned the tide 3 weeks before the anniversary. That Sunday call began like always. Then she said, I hope you don't mind, but I sent your anonymous link to an art friend in Santa Barbara. His name is Edward Blake. He owns a studio there and scouts emerging talent. My stomach flipped. Aunt Diane had forwarded the exact email I'd almost deleted as spam, the one from Edward Blake asking to discuss my series. He wants a solo exhibition, she continued, voice steady. You deserve this, no permission required. I learned that lesson late, don't wait like I did. I stared at the email on my screen, hands unsteady. The old voice whispered, good things don't happen to me, but her words sliced through it. I replied that night. The following days dissolved into party preparation. I took time off my remote marketing clients to help. Ordered white roses and peonies to my mother's exact specifications. Hand-wrote 300 place cards in the calligraphy she demanded. Coordinated the caterer pressed tablecloths until they were crisp, polished the Waterford crystal glasses that had been their wedding gift 40 years ago. The morning of the party, I arrived at 7 in jeans and a t-shirt because there was no point dressing up when I'd spend the next 10 hours in the kitchen. By late afternoon, the house looked flawless, candles flickering on every surface. The dining table extended across the living room, set for 300 with her finest china. I changed into a simple black dress in the hallway. My mother caught me there, scanned me head to toe, and said, That's acceptable, I suppose. Just stay in the background. Today is about your father and me. I nodded. I always nodded. At 7 p.m., guests arrived, old colleagues, neighbors with perfect lawns. The guests arrived at 7, 300 of them in sports coats and cocktail dresses, filling the house with overlapping conversations, clinking glasses, and the low buzz of people who thought they knew the Nolan family well. Christopher and Stephanie made their entrance at 7:15, perfectly timed to draw every eye. Stephanie swept through the door in a red wrap dress she immediately announced as designer label, Christopher right behind, in a charcoal suit, Jacob and Mia dressed like they stepped out of a catalog. My mother rushed forward to embrace them, exclaiming how stunning Stephanie looked, how sharp Christopher was, how utterly precious the grandchildren were. She turned to the room with a proud smile. Everyone, my son. Christopher, manager at Elite Corp, he made partner last year. We're so proud. Applause rippled through the guests. No one mentioned that I'd handled his taxes for free 3 years straight. I moved through the crowd with trays of bruschetta and crab cakes, refilling wine glasses, answering questions from strangers who didn't recognize me. One woman reached for an appetizer and asked, Are you with the catering company? Before I could respond, my mother appeared beside her. Oh, that's Rebecca, my other child. She's helping out tonight. The woman nodded politely and turned back to her conversation. My mother didn't notice the slight. She never did. Later, Christopher approached with Mia squirming in his arms and Jacob tugging at his jacket. Can you take them? Stephanie and I need to mingle. No, please no, thank you, just the expectation. Like handing off luggage. I carried them to the kitchen, fed them dinner, wiped juice from Mia's dress when she spilled it, told Jacob 3 stories to keep him from darting back into the living room and disrupting the party. When I finally stepped out, dessert was being served. No one had thought to save me a plate. I hadn't eaten anything all day. At 9 o'clock, after my mother's tiramisu was cleared, my father stood up and tapped his champagne glass with a fork. The room hushed instantly. 300 faces turned toward him with expectant smiles. Barbara and I want to thank you all for being here tonight, he began, voice warm and practiced. 40 years of marriage, 4 decades of building this family, this life, this home. My mother beamed beside him. Christopher reached for Stephanie's hand. I stood near the kitchen doorway, still holding an empty dessert plate. And to celebrate this milestone, my father continued, pausing for dramatic effect. We have a surprise announcement. My mother's eyes sparkled. Next week, we're taking the whole family to the Bahamas. 1 week at the Four Seasons, a second celebration, just the Nolans. Murmurs of admiration spread through the room. How wonderful. You two deserve it. Christopher let out a delighted squeal. Dad, that's amazing! The kids are going to love it. I felt a flicker of hope lift in my chest. The whole family. For once I would be included. I stepped forward, allowing a small smile. That sounds incredible. What time is our flight? The question hung in the air. My father's expression shifted. He glanced at my mother. Something passed between them, a look I'd seen 1,000 times but never fully understood until that second. Rebecca, he said slowly, you don't need to know the flight time. The room went still, not the comfortable silence of anticipation, but the tense quiet of something going wrong. Because you're not going, my mother added, as if it were obvious. Christopher and Stephanie need a real vacation. That means you'll watch the children. 300 eyes locked on me. 300 witnesses to my mother publicly telling me I wasn't part of the family trip. One woman near the back leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Poor thing, she must be used to it by now." The glass in my hand trembled. I set it down carefully. In that moment, I wondered if someone close humiliated you before a crowd, how might that change things for you? Enough. It was time for my secret. Later that night, alone in the kitchen party, laughter drifted from outside. The last guests left, and my parents went to bed exhausted from the night of congratulations. I stayed behind in the living room folding tablecloths, when I realized I still needed to send a file to a client whose deadline I'd delayed for the party. My laptop was at home, so I opened my mother's on the kitchen counter. She had borrowed mine countless times without asking. Safari was still open and her Gmail remained logged in. I should have logged out. Instead, my name appeared in the subject line of a recent thread, Bahamas Arrangements Rebecca Situation. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I clicked. The messages were between my mother and Christopher from the week before the party. Barbara wrote, "Keep Rebecca here to watch the kids. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway, like having free help. She should be grateful we give her something to do." Christopher replied, "Totally agree, Mom. She'll probably feel useful for once. It's kind of sad, honestly, but at least it works out for us." I read the exchange 3 times to absorb it. Free help, grateful, kind of sad. I took screenshots, forwarded them to myself, deleted the sent email, cleared the browser history. Then I sat in the dark kitchen of the house where I grew up, and finally let the truth settle. I wasn't family. I was staff. I drove home at 1 in the morning through quiet streets to my small 1-bedroom apartment. Beige carpet, white walls, secondhand furniture my mother once called depressing. I sat in the darkness, staring at my phone. The email from Edward Blake glowed on the screen, the one I'd answered but never followed up. We'd exchanged messages about meeting in person. He was excited about the series. I could go. I picked up the phone and called the only person who would understand. Aunt Diane answered on the second ring despite the hour. I told her everything: the announcement, the public dismissal, the messages. My voice cracked only once when I read "free help" aloud. When I finished, there was silence. Then she said, "Rebecca, I have a spare room above the cafe. I need help with the morning shift anyway. And that studio, it's 30 minutes from my place." I started to protest, but she cut in gently. "Yes, you can. You can leave. You can choose yourself for once. The only person stopping you is you." I hung up at 2. By 6, I'd started packing 3 suitcases, the tablet, the scarf that had wrapped it. For the first time in 32 years, I left the world's best aunt apron behind. The drive from Philadelphia to Ojai took 4 days, 45 hours if you push straight through. I didn't. I stopped at roadside motels, ate at diners where no one knew my name. In Nebraska, I pulled over at a rest stop and watched the sunset paint the prairie gold and pink. I designed my first completely free piece there, Overlooked Lives, without any obligation. In Arizona, at a gas station, I turned my phone on for directions and saw the texts. Stephanie, Jacob and Mia miss Aunt Rebecca. Their schedule's food allergies, I'll text everything. Christopher. Your schedule is flexible, no boyfriend tying you down. I deleted them. My mother sent 6 voicemails escalating from, "You're tearing the family apart" to, "Your father is devastated he barely ate." I ignored everyone. Standing at that crossroads, choosing myself over everything familiar, it's the kind of decision that makes you reflect on your own turning points. Arriving in California, salt air hit, I started breathing. 7 o'clock on the 5th day, I pulled into the driveway of Clay Haven in Ojai. Aunt Diane stood on the porch with arms open and said, "Welcome home," in a way that made the words feel real for the first time in 32 years. Ojai felt like a dream at first, storybook cottages, galleries tucked on every corner, ocean mist drifting through cypress trees. Clay Haven sat on a quiet street 2 blocks from the beach, hand-lettered sign, blue shutters, lavender spilling from window boxes. The pottery studio filled the back half where Diane taught classes and sold her pieces to tourists who came for coffee. My room was upstairs, small and bright, with a white quilt on the bed, a desk by the window, and a view of the Pacific that hit me hard every morning. Morning shift 6 to noon, Diane told me over dinner that first night. After that, the time is yours. I didn't know how to thank her. She waved it off. Don't thank me, just build something, that's enough. The next morning, I woke before dawn and tied on a canvas apron with Clay Haven stitched in blue thread. I learned to make pour-over coffee and greeted the first regulars, locals, who called Diane by name, tourists charmed by the homemade scones. I took orders, wiped tables, talked with strangers who had no clue I'd left my entire life behind 5 days earlier. By noon, I'd earned $40 in tips. I'd smiled more in those few hours than in the months before. At 2, I had an appointment in Santa Barbara. I showered, changed into the nicest dress I owned, and walked the short distance to meet the man who might change everything. Edward Blake looked nothing like I expected, tall, weathered silver hair, kind eyes, linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, smiled like we'd known each other for years. "Rebecca Nolan," he said, shaking my hand. "Diane told me a lot about you, but the work speaks for itself." He led me through the studio, white walls, natural light designs, paintings displayed with careful precision. "I've studied your Instagram closely," Edward said. "Overlooked Lives has a rare truth most artists chase for decades." I didn't know how to respond. He stopped at a large monitor showing my portfolio. One piece was a digital portrait of an elderly woman waiting alone at a bus stop, face mapped with lines, quiet dignity. "This one reached out to me," he said. Something in her eyes, patience, resignation, heartbreaking. "She waited 40 minutes for a bus that came late," I said quietly. "Nobody offered help." Edward nodded. "You see people, Rebecca. Really see them. That's rare." He turned to me. "I'd like to offer you a solo exhibition, 15 pieces opening in 6 weeks. We'll cover printing, framing, marketing. You keep 60% of sales." I signed the contract Tuesday afternoon at Edward's desk with sunlight pouring through the windows. The document was straightforward: 15 designs, late August, opening gallery, handling, production, 60% to me. Standard fair terms, he assured. But reading the pages, my hands shook. Not from the terms. From seeing artist Rebecca Nolan in official type, a legal acknowledgement my work had value. I thought of all the unpaid taxes, organized parties, childcare without credit. My name had never appeared on anything that honored my contribution until now. The exhibition title, Edward pointed out, "Overlooked Lives, Designs of the Unseen." "Perfect," I whispered. I signed. Edward countersigned. His assistant notarized it. When it was done, he handed me my copy. "Congratulations, Rebecca. You're officially represented." 6 weeks later, at the Santa Barbara studio opening. The Santa Barbara studio glowed under soft lights. 50 guests moved through the space, artists and collectors sipping champagne, while a string quartet played quietly in the corner. I wore a navy dress, hair down for once, lipstick, something I rarely bothered with. 15 designs hung on the walls in simple black frames, large prints of overlooked lives, each priced to make my pulse race. Aunt Diane appeared at my side, pressing a glass into my hand. "How do you feel?" Terrified, I admitted. "What if nobody buys?" She nodded toward a woman in pearls examining the centerpiece, an elderly woman waiting alone at a bus stop. A small red dot had appeared beside it. "Helen Wright just bought that one for $3,000. $3,000 for something I created." Edward approached, grinning. "I want to introduce you to Laura King from the local magazine. They're considering you for next month's cover feature. Cover feature. My face, my name, my story in print." I was halfway through the introduction when the door opened and my world tilted. Christopher and Stephanie walked in, still sunburned from the Bahamas. Stephanie wore a floral sundress more suited to a beach brunch than a gallery opening, Christopher frowning at his phone. They scanned the room until they spotted me. Stephanie rushed forward, arms outstretched. "Rebecca, oh my God, we've been so worried." 50 guests turned. The quartet faltered for half a beat, then continued. Christopher appeared behind her, nodding like we were colleagues. "Nice place." "It's a gallery," I said calmly. "My opening, actually." Stephanie blinked, taking in the walls, the price tags, the champagne. "You did all this since when?" "Since 3 years ago. You never asked what I did in my free time." Aunt Diane materialized at my elbow, a quiet wall of support. Across the room, Edward watched, ready to step in. Stephanie leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Rebecca, I have news. I'm pregnant again. Number 3. And I really need you to come home. Christopher's work is crazy right now. Mom's not helpful with the kids. I need you." There it was, not apology, not congratulations. Just need. Always need. Christopher stepped forward, irritation flickering. "With all due respect, Diane, this is family business." Aunt Diane laughed short, sharp. "Family business? You mean the family that uninvited her from vacation and called her free help in messages she wasn't supposed to see?" Stephanie went pale. Guests stopped pretending not to listen. Laura King's pen moved rapidly across her notepad. Helen Wright set down her champagne. "I just paid $3,000 for that young woman's art. I'm very curious why her family thinks she should abandon her career to babysit." The temperature in the room dropped. Christopher coughed uncomfortably. Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. Then Christopher said the twist I never expected. "This is ridiculous. We'll pay you now. Come home. Family business." I stepped into the center of my own exhibition and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Congrats on the pregnancy. Genuinely. But I won't be coming back to Boston to be your childcare. Hire a nanny. Your elite corp pays enough. You've never had trouble spending money before. What you can't do is hire me because I was never paid." I gestured to the walls. "This isn't a hobby. I built it for 3 years while everyone assumed I had nothing important to do. And just so we're clear," I pointed to the bus stop piece Helen had bought that sold for $3,000. "Tonight, 4 pieces totaled $8,000. Silence absolute. I pulled out my phone. "Let me read you something." I read the messages aloud. Barbara's free help, Christopher's useful for once. Guests murmured. Helen Wright raised her glass in a silent toast. Applause started with Edward, then Aunt Diane, then rippled through the room. Not for the designs. For me. For finally saying enough. My parents arrived 20 minutes later, my mother in her Burberry trench coat, my father in a blazer looking out of place. Barbara walked straight to me. "We need to talk." I intercepted them. "You came all this way." "Of course we did. You disappeared when we needed you most. Now I find you here playing artist while your brother struggles. Christopher is wealthy and inconvenienced, not struggling." "Don't be cruel, Rebecca. It isn't the me you wanted, the one you could count on. But that Rebecca was never seen. She was used." My father cleared his throat. "Your mother is trying to say, I know what she's saying, I've heard it my whole life, family first, sacrifices, not selfish, but I wasn't family for the Bahamas. So which is it?" No answer. I pulled my phone again. "This is from your messages before the party. I read them aloud. The room went silent again. My mother went white. Laura King wrote furiously. Aunt Diane said gently, "It might be time to leave." My mother flushed scarlet. My father took her arm. They left without another word. The door closed with the soft click that echoed louder than a slam. Months later, the consequences settled. My mother, Barbara, was shunned in the neighborhood gossip spread. How could she treat her daughter that way? Christopher divorced Stephanie. The stress from the Bahamas chaos lost deal. No babysit support broke their marriage. I blocked all contact. No cards, no texts, no updates. Reflection came in the studio looking at the Pacific. 2 tablets on the shelf, the old pawn shop. One proved I could see, the new one earned with my art proved they saw me back. My second show. Boundaries opens next month. 15 new designs exploring edges where family ends and self begins. Looking back, if family crashed your proudest moment demanding the old you, it makes you think about where boundaries truly begin. Parentification poisons scapegoat versus golden child is real. Boundaries aren't betrayal. Self-respect is inherent. The bravest thing isn't fighting back. It's walking away, building a life that speaks louder than any argument. You deserve to be seen. We all do. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.